On today's show, I am joined by Bleacher Report NBA draft expert Jonathan Wasserman for a look at the Hawks and the draft. With just over a week to go until the big day, we get into the intel on the Hawks, players to target, and more, and it's all coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1997 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Monday morning here in mid-June. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And right now, if you're a new customer, get $200 in bonus bets. Your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. The place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you find your podcast. Just search Locked On Hawks on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Overcast, etc. And we'll be there, and tell your friends about the show as well. I'll be joined in a moment by Jonathan Wasserman, good friend of the podcast, been on the show before. He is the lead NBA draft expert at Bleacher Report, NBA TV. He was one of the founders, I believe, of NBADraft.net. Just a long history of covering the draft at the very highest levels. And shout out to John for coming on the podcast today. One quick note at the top of the show. Over the weekend, the news broke that Igor Kokoskov, the Hawks lead assistant from last year, is going to be moving on to a head job overseas. Not a surprise. It's kind of been in the ether the last few weeks, but the Hawks will have a job to fill on the bench in between now and the start of the season. No urgency there. They can just promote somebody. They don't have to hire outside, but if they want to, they certainly can. Igor is a very respected name, a very overqualified, honestly, lead assistant in the NBA. So they'll have to find that person to kind of tag to replace him. But in the meantime, that's all we have on the news front. And without any further delay now, we'll dive right in with Jonathan Wasserman on the NBA draft. I am joined now by one of the experts that I follow very, very closely in the NBA draft space, Jonathan Wasserman. How are you, man?
I'm good, Brad. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you taking the time to do this in the midst of the silly season. We're, I think, 9 days, as you and I are talking now, from the first round of the draft. And, I'm sure you've been asked every question under the sun. You got to do mock drafts all the time. That world is interesting. I'll start here. The Hawks pick 13 and 22. There's been talk they could move up or move down or move out or all those things. We'll talk about that. But what do you make of kind of the quality of the draft in the mid-first round range? Like, I don't want to waste your time talking about Cooper Flagg on this podcast. There's no real reason to do that on this show. But what do you think about the general range of where the Hawks are and the quality of this class?
I feel pretty good about this class, not just the star power at the top, but to have two picks. What do you have, 13 and 22?
Yep.
Honestly, I really don't know if there's even much of a difference between 13 and 22. I think you could say that there's one big tier. And I think you're getting good value with both of those spots. Like when I do these mock drafts, the group of guys who are in contention for each pick, I mean, I'd say that it's a pretty strong 13 pick and a pretty strong 22 pick, I guess, depending on who they take at 22. But there's certainly a lot of quality options. And definitely compared to last year's draft, it's a nice little upgrade.
Yeah, and before I ask you about some players, I definitely will do that. Not to put you on the spot, but you might have thought about this. Are you hearing anything on the Hawks? Because it's such a weird process with their front office. Like, it's this brand new group. Landry's not there anymore. Like, I am myself having trouble, I will admit that, trying to figure out what they're going to do. Are you hearing anything about anyone they like or anything on the Hawks right now?
No, and listen, it's they're going to bring in everybody. Nobody really knows who they actually like or who they want to take. And of course, they don't know who's going to be on the board when they're on the clock. You could always zero in on a couple of guys and you realize, and then suddenly someone's there who, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly who Atlanta likes and what they're going to do on draft night. But I think it's pretty safe to say what group of guys they're going to be looking at. And I think with Atlanta, the question right now is, you kind of have your 1, 2, and 3 set with Trey and Reese Shea and Dyson Daniels. So the question is, how much do you do, the best player available versus trying to plug a hole? And of course, Jalen Johnson at the 4. And so, are they going to prioritize finding a center? I think that's probably the big question of how they're going to go about this process, because there's going to be players who are in that best player available conversation. And Atlanta already has young guys kind of invested at those spots. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, because there will be, I think, a couple big guys at 13 and definitely at 22 that would obviously fill a hole on paper.
I was going to ask you about the big guys anyway, so we could just start there now. I know it's a few days old now as we're talking, but your most recent mock, you actually had Derik Queen falling all the way to 13. That's been a guy that I can't seem to get a feel on for the Hawks. Like, I've been thinking he probably will be gone, but he could be there. I mean, that's kind of the range they're in. First of all, do you like the fit? Obviously, enough to mock it at some point you did. But, there's been Khaman Maluach trade-up stuff. Is there a big or two that you think would be worthy of prioritizing at 13 overall if you're the Hawks?
I really like Noa Essengue from France. I don't think he's going to be there from what I'm hearing. I think there's a couple teams in the top 10 that are showing more interest than others. And I just get the feeling he's going to be gone. And he did measure 6'11". So I'm kind of wondering, like, what is he, a 4? Is he a 5? I think he could probably play the 5 if his body fills out. But back to Queen I like Queen's fit on paper. I mean, he gives Atlanta another guy you can kind of feature in the half court, somebody you can feed and not just rely on so much Trey. And I think that's really the big draw to Queen is game slows down in the half court. His footwork is using both hands. I mean, his handle is so much better than I thought it was going to be coming out of Montverde, where he's a guy who can actually play away from the basket and face you up and attack. So I do like the fit with Queen. Of course, then you got to answer the defensive question marks, because I do think that he is going to have some difficulty, at least early on in his career. They're going to pull him away from the basket. They're going to put him in pick and rolls, and he doesn't really come off as like a big time rim protector. But offensively, I mean, he could be very, very good. And Maluach, from what I'm hearing, is like the level of interest in Maluach is really high, to the point where I had a team tell me the other day, like, they really think he's going to go top 5. And so me personally, I wouldn't give up a lot to move up for him. I think he's a little bit raw, and I think the idea of him is maybe more appealing than what you're actually getting. But yeah, he's somebody who's certainly going to be in the conversation, but I don't expect him to be there at 13.
So you mentioned before that it's almost like one big tier, and we align there, and that's not why I'm having you on the show. We align on that one. I think that there isn't a huge gap even between 22 and 13, and also I've not been the biggest proponent of trading up. That's been, anytime you have 2 picks, this, like, the natural question is, all right, if we move them, put them together, how far can we move up the board? I don't love that idea, but in the event that there was is there a guy that say, all right, I'm going to guarantee you, John, the Hawks are going to try to trade up? Would there be somebody that you would like? Because I think it's been Maluach has been like the guy people are dreaming on. But if it's not him, if you don't see that as potentially even available, is there a trade up option, or would you just kind of be like, stay put and make your 2 picks?
I would stay put. I mean, I don't know how far up the board you can go. Maybe you start talking to, the Jazz or the Wizards. It's 5 and 6, but even those guys, like, who are projected to go there, Jeremiah Fears is a hot name. You don't love the fit with Trey after, especially what we saw with DeJounte. Yakuchonis is a top 10 name, but again, where does he fit in the equation for Atlanta? There's just like a lot of repetition with the Hawks roster, and nobody to me in that range is such a surefire star that you have to trade 2 picks to move. But I would stick and take 2 swings here.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Sportsbook NBA playoffs are in full swing. The finals happening right now, and every night they deliver with highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's game-winning shots or players having a true breakout in the middle of the playoffs, there's never been a better time to get on the action with FanDuel Sportsbook, and they make it really easy to get into the game and also stay in the game, both before tip-off and live when the game is going on. They have player props for performance trends, same parlays, and much more. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and also win big at FanDuel. Especially true during the playoffs with so many high-level games. It's also the case every single day of the year. They have offerings across the sports betting space. They have over-unders and point spreads, money lines, player props, game props, future bets, live betting, and same-game parlays, and more. Plus, they have every sport and league you can think of at FanDuel. That's headlined by the NBA, of course, which we talk about all the time on this podcast. We also college sports, NFL, MLB, NHL, UFC. They have golf, tennis, soccer, boxing, and everything in between. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time right now to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com right now. Place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. If that first bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So at number 13, if it's not a big, for instance, like it could be other guys we'll talk about in a second, maybe. But there's this group of guys. I'm not trying to like put them together, but there's guys who are not bigs and not guards. You got your Carter Bryants and Cedric Coward and Colin Murray Boyles, guys that are like almost always in that late lottery range on big boards and mocks. I wonder what you think about that general range of guys. You can throw in anybody else that you want to in there too, if you like somebody better than those guys. But if you're just taking the best player available pick at 13, and it's not a big, for instance, is there somebody that screams to you? Like, is there a personal favorite of yours in that kind of maybe, wing / forward?
I really like Nick Clifford from Colorado State. I mean, I think I may have him higher than anybody else, at least in the draft space. I know he's one of the older guys, but I think he's one of those guys who's going to be just undervalued because he's 23 years old. Is he a best player available at 13? Of course, you get some pushback on that, and depending on who's left. But the guys who threw out there, I think, all really justify, a number 13 selection. Murray Boyles is really interesting. Of course, we have to keep going back to this. Like, can he play with Jalen Johnson? There's just really not much of a, it's hard to picture both of them on the floor at the same time. But that's why I love the draft. It's like, do you just ignore that and just take the best player available? And like, you worry about it in a couple of years when you have a stud player, on the bench, and now you have two assets and you can create some flexibility with your roster building and stuff like that. But Murray Boyles, Carter Bryant is a hot name. I had a scout the other day tell me like he's definitely going in the lottery. Again, he's like Reese Shea in a bit where there's, these big wings, shot making wings, maybe not the highest level creators. I can't imagine Atlanta would go with Carter Bryant, but Asa Newell is a name who I think should certainly be, close to the top of the board there in terms of like best player available if he's left at 13, and somebody who I think is a good fit. I mean, I think Newell plays the 5 in the NBA. And I got to see him work out like a solo workout in Chicago, and he's one of those guys like you watch in the workout setting. I know it's easy to be influenced, and these guys are very persuasive, one on none. But man, he's close to 7 feet. He's flying above the rim. He's shooting threes effortlessly, and that archetype of a big guy that could stretch the floor and switch defensively is very coveted. And I do like that fit there at the 5 for Atlanta.
Well, he's the not local product being in Georgia. People are asking me about him all the time. So it's something like you think he can stick at the 5 long term? That's one of the questions he has about him. Is like, is he kind of a tweener? And the Hawks already have a guy that I think is a 5 in a Kongwu, but isn't a 7-footer, obviously. So that's been a conversation. You think Asa is a 5 long term if you had to choose?
I mean, I guess it depends on who he's paired with. I think you can get away with him at the 5 in certain matchups. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
maybe certain games where they're playing, a big bruiser down low, you adjust the lineup a little bit. But I wouldn't let that. If I thought he was the best player available, I wouldn't worry about whether he's a 4 or 5. Like that wouldn't be a big enough issue for me or a big enough question mark to pass on him if you did think that he was the best guy on the board.
I want to go back to Nick Clifford because I probably have under-discussed him, to be honest. I like him too, but because you said you have him higher than everybody else does, give me the sales pitch on Nick Clifford. Like I know what I like about him, but what do you see and like what are you valuing with his game?
Well, I love the floor, and the floor was kind of there last year, so he was more of like a Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades guy. Make the open shot, make the extra pass, defend. He wasn't really a creator, and then this year they put him in that role, and we just saw him kind of really take off with it and improved his off the dribble game like a crazy amount. He shot 43% on pull-up jumpers, and he made 60 of them. I mean, I love that number. He scores from every spot on the floor. He's been pretty consistent from deep, even though it's not on a lot of volume, but also 4.5 assists per game. Like I love those guys like Jalen Johnson, like those big forwards who you can run offense through. And a guy would be like, 20-10-5 guy like Jalen Johnson. The more I talk about it out loud, the more I see some similarities, but that kind of that versatility I just love. And the fact that he's gotten so much better with the ball in his hands. I love his body type. He's got these big, broad shoulders. He seems to be a high character kid from everything I've heard. And, I just think he's a very safe pick. Of course, history will say you take a 23-year-old in the draft, you're probably not going to get an all-star caliber player. So, of course, it depends who else is on the board. But, I think he's somebody to think about. Also, he could easily be there at 22, by the way.
Yeah.
So, if you're Atlanta, you probably don't, reach up and grab him at 13, I guess you take the chance that he could be there at 22 if there is any interest at all.
That actually reminds me of something I was going to ask you in general. Like, I am of the mind of not even thinking that way. Like, if there's a guy that they like and you're like, hey, maybe he'll be there at 22. If he's your guy, you just take him. Like, to me, is that, so you agree with me on that? It's like, you don't want to risk it too much. If it's one guy that you're like, this is my guy, you kind of got to just burn it at 13.
Yeah. And I think teams mostly will do that. They'll ignore, the mock drafts out there and like whether they think he's going to be there at 22 based on what other people, like if they like him, they'll take him, they'll reach on him early. That's what teams do. And it's hard to argue with the logic there.
Where are you on the Cedric Coward split? Because there seems to be a split with him. People are really in or they're really not. Where do you kind of fall on that as a guy who obviously the upside's clear, but he just hasn't put that much on tape? It's just a weird evaluation.
It's one of the strangest like scouting evaluation situations I can remember. And you really don't know like how legit the interest is until we see it play out on draft night. Everything is just buzz. Like he could go in the second round, and this whole conversation is like such a waste of time that we're talking about him. But I know people in his camp who say that there are teams that have him top 10, and then there are also people in this camp who are like, yeah, there are teams who just are not going to want to take the chance. A guy who played 6 games and didn't really play any quality opponents. But, if you have an imagination and you want to take a little bit of risk, you could see why he is an appealing guy. It's hard to have like a confident take, right? It's how could you have a confident take on the guy who played 6 games? And, the year before Eastern Washington, he played well against Cincinnati early that year as a junior, and Stanford, I think he had a big game against, but still it's like, it's one of the weirdest scouting situations. But on paper, you look at a guy who's 6'5" in socks, 7'2" wingspan, 213, almost identical measurements to Jalen Williams. So the body type is obviously appealing. And then you just look at the tape and you see a guy who's hitting mid-range jumpers. He's shooting a 3. He's averaging almost 2 blocks a game. He averages almost 4 assists per game in that brief little sample size. So he does a lot. He's got the body. It's a clear risk reward, high risk boomer bust type of situation here, I think. And we'll see if a team is willing to take a chance on him, because the rewards could be big, and every team likes a guy with his particular skill set at that position. But of course, it's hard to really have confidence in a guy who played just 6 games against pretty weak competition.
I wonder, does it free you up if you're the Hawks, perhaps, that number one, you have 2 picks? And also what we said earlier, like they don't have that like screaming need at that position. Does that give you more license to take a swing if you like the guy? Like if you can be like, hey, if we miss here, we miss. It's not going to absolutely sink us. Is that a rational thought process?
Yeah, I guess it is. I mean, it depends on who else is on the board. Like this could be, if there's somebody that they have top 10 who's suddenly there at 13, then suddenly we're not talking about this anymore. But I mean, with 2 picks, you always like to think that you can gamble with one of them, especially if you think the same caliber player is going to be there at 22. If you share my mindset where that you're kind of grabbing from the same tier of players with both of those picks. So I mean, I think it gives you a little bit more freedom to take a swing.
I want to go actually to the international guys for a second, because I know you scout them closely, and not everybody does, to be honest. What do you make of this international class in the first round? Because I mean, I'm not going to try to group them together always, but you got you get the wing forward guys like Noah Penda and Hugo Gonzalez. You got Nolan Traore at guard. You got Baron Jase used to be rising because he measured crazy, and he's been in the mix at 13, maybe as high as that for the Hawks. Anybody stand out to you of this international class? The Hawks are not afraid to take a guy that's not a college player. We saw that a year ago. So what do you make of this kind of group?
I'm really high on Noa Essengue. I mean, I said it earlier. I think he is. He's my number 1 rated international guy who didn't play college basketball. Another guy who I love these guys who just keep getting better. Like every month he adds something new, and for him to be so raw and still so productive, and the second youngest player in the draft, just at the current rate of improvement, like if it just continues with his body type at 6'11", I mean, he is a lot of similarities to Pascal Siakam, Jeremy Grant, that type of guy. And so if you just continue to, you want to bet on the same type of growth we've seen over the last 2 years, I think his ceiling is very high and somebody that can reach it. The other guys you mentioned, Penda is an interesting guy. To me, he looks like an NBA role player. It's hard to picture a pathway to a lot of upside. With he does a lot of things, but nothing too great. It's really interesting body type. But yeah, he's sure you want to take a swing on him at 22 or in the late first round. Like, I wouldn't argue against it. I think Hugo Gonzalez is going to be undervalued in this draft, just because he barely played 11 minutes a game this year, and when he did, it was a lot of standing around. And of course, he played with Real Madrid, a lot of former pros on that team, so never really had a chance. And before the season, I think most would say Hugo Gonzalez was a lottery pick. Yeah. I don't think he got worse this year. I just don't think he had an opportunity to build any confidence or rhythm. So I'd imagine he's somebody who slips and goes maybe closer to the 20s. And I think he's good value in the late first round. And Nolan Traore is another interesting name, a guy who was considered most by lottery, even top 10 to start the season. Had a pretty inefficient year in terms of scoring, in terms of shooting, but was much better over the last couple months. And one of the best passers in the draft. I mean, he's going to go into this draft, I think, with the highest assist percentage of any prospect. And he did it at 18, 19 years old as a starting point guard in Pro A. So I always say passing translates. Is he going to be a star caliber player or, a backup point guard? Like, it's tough to have confidence that there's a star upside there. I have him more as a guy in the 15 to 20 range. But I do think he's an NBA player. And I just don't know how early I take him. I think there's a lot of varying opinions on him. I've heard, we know that there's definitely some, like, he's been a hot name since he was 16, 17 years old. So I know some scouts, some U.S. scouts who just don't see it. But of course, the international guys who followed him for longer, have been on him for a while, and I think expect big things with just his feel for the game. I think he's one of those point guards where it's like, forget about athleticism. He's just someone who knows how to play and is going to make guys around him better.
And to me, he's got enough size where if you're the Hawks, you can think he might be able to play with Trey a little bit at some point. Like, that's been my qualifier always. Like, if I'm the Hawks, I don't want to draft a small guard, like a tiny guard, because of the logistics of it all. But Traore's got enough size to him. I want to ask you a theoretical about maybe it's 22, maybe they trade, whatever it's going to be. But if the Hawks don't get one of the big name centers, Queen, Maluach, and a trade up or whatever, and they look at the board and they say, we want to get a center at 22. If we take a guy at 13 we love, I'm going to throw a bunch of names at you. Some of them will probably be gone, but some of them could be there. You got Thomas Sorber, you got Beringer, Danny Wolf, Maxime Reynaud, like any number, Ryan Kalkbrenner, all these guys that maybe could be there at 22, maybe wouldn't be, etc. If you were a team that wanted to draft a center in the 20s, if you're the Hawks, would you like any of those guys better than another? Like, I've always been a Sorber guy, but I also I think about him at 13. Like, I like Thomas Sorber, but not everybody does, for instance. So do you have a favorite or two out of that group?
Yeah, I mean, Sorber's pretty interesting. I mean, he does remind me a little bit of Okongwu in terms of, like, I wish he was bigger. I think he was 6'9" in socks.
Yeah, he measured good weight. His wingspan was big, but he's not the tallest guy in the world. Yeah.
And I was very high on Okongwu coming out of USC. I think I had him top 3.
Me too.
and we kind of see it get to the league, and the game doesn't translate the same way, and they're not just going to feed him the ball in the post. And then that was kind of Sorber's game, post up heavy. At 22, though, we're nitpicking. I mean, I think he definitely justifies a selection there, and there's a lot of defensive upside with his length and mobility, and offensively, I think the coolest thing about him is the passing. He's a really good passer, somebody who's a big guy that you put at the top of the key, and he's just going to throw darts to cutters, and like you can run offense through him as a big playmaker. So he's got a very interesting game, and definitely somebody who justifies a slot there. Reynaud is like obviously one of the hottest names of the draft process, the pre-draft process after the combine. I think I've had him being mocked to Atlanta for the last couple of mock drafts I have. I think it's at the point where maybe he's going too early. I talked to some scouts who are like, he's going to go closer to lottery than he is to 30. I think that's a little too high for me. 22 is, again, it's the 22nd pick in the draft. I I wouldn't give him a D grade if they took him there.
Right.
But there's probably some more interesting players that I would take that are best player available guys who are not centers. Danny Wolf, like I don't see Wolf as even though he's a 7-footer, I don't see him as a big.
I agree.
I mean, I think he's closer to a 3 than he is to a 5. But another interesting guy, I just, playing him as a starting center, I just don't know if there's going to be enough defense, enough, interior physicality with him. But yeah, very cool player with a big guy that can handle the ball like that. And Beringer he's the same archetype as Capella. That's what you're getting. You're getting a rim runner, finisher, shot blocker, and that's it. Not a guy who makes many decisions with the ball. It's just catch it and dunk it, or don't catch it at all. So that's what you're getting with him. I know ESPN has him pretty high. I'm not willing to go as high as them with rankings and stuff, but like at 22, yeah, sure, I could see why you'd want to take him there.
Yeah, it's again, it probably seems weird if you're not following this track closely. Like the tier is so big that I feel like it's like trying to assign slots to these guys. Like I'm trying to kind of generally do that, but even then, everyone that you should consider at 22, you have to kind of think about at 13. It's not that far away. Right. I have to ask you, he's an international player, but I promise you he's the guy I asked about the most. You're going to laugh. It's Hansen Yang. Hawks fans love Hansen Yang, and I wonder what you think of him. Probably not 13, but listen, maybe they trade down or whatever. Big split on him, I will say. He seems to be rising. People think first round, maybe buzz by the end of this, but I don't want to lead you. So what do you think about Hansen Yang?
Well, I think, I'm higher on him today than I was the day before the NBA Combine. I mean, that was
I think we all are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was like very validating to see. The question is he going to move? Can he move with these college athletes, with these NBA prospects? Because they move a lot differently in China. And so he held his own, obviously. And yeah, I mean, at 22, I don't know if I go. There's probably other guys I feel more comfortable with it. But yeah, with everybody going back to college, he's really moved up. I mean, he's got to be an early second-round pick at this point. Do I think he's a pro? I think he's got a chance to be a backup center. Could he be a one of those like Marc Gasol steals of the draft that nobody sees? I don't have enough confidence to say that, but he does a lot of interesting things. Again, with the skill level, the footwork, his passing is really good. I want to see when NBA teams bring him away from the basket. How well does he move? How much rim protection does he provide? And if he can start to make a couple of, at least threaten teams from behind the arc, because he did make a handful of threes this year. Yeah, then you got an interesting player. But yeah, he's somebody I just think based on the risk reward, like I feel more comfortable taking him at 31 or anywhere in the second round than in the first. But yeah, he's definitely moved up boards, and he's going to be he'll be on the roster next season, I'm sure.
I had to ask. He's very popular in Hawk circles. I'm going to let you get out of here, but one more thing. You might have already said it, but I always give everybody opportunity. Is there, who are your guys? Do you have a guy or two that you're like, is your guy in this class? It could be a second rounder. It doesn't matter where it could be someone that the Hawks have no chance at, but do you have a guy or two that's like, this is my guy?
Jase Richardson. I love
Jase. Well, let's talk about so for the Hawks, it's tricky, but go. It's interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I get it. He's 6 feet barefoot, and that was a little disheartening to see. But I'm the type of guy who it's like, if he was 6'1", would we be so worried? Like if he was this much taller, is it going to make that much of a difference? I think he's just another one of those guys. You can't teach what he has. He just knows how to pick his spots. Obviously, he's a shot maker, a shooter, but he just knows like when to attack, when to take this step, how to use his body around the basket and finish. Like he's one of those guys where I'm just going to bet on him figuring out how to overcome the fact that he is 6'1" and not 6'2", right? Or 6'3". Like if he measured 6'1" in socks, which means he'd probably be 6'2" and a half in shoes. Like there's a lot of successful NBA guards that are 6'2" in shoes. I think he can figure it out. And somebody who I think is going to slip in this draft based on that number. He's if you're to say who's like one of your guys, he's my guy. I'll probably have him on my final big board ranked top 10. So I don't think he's going to go top 10. I think he'll go probably closer to 20, but somebody who I think is going to be one of the steals based on where he's projected to go now.
I know you don't cover the Hawks, but would you consider him as the Hawks? I know it's a tricky fit with Trey, but like, is he so good that you'd be like you have to think about it?
It's man to have two small guards like that. I would definitely, obviously at 22, I would take him in a heartbeat. I'm a very big proponent of take the best player available and forget the details.
I'm with you.
So I would do that probably, but it would.
You think about it longer because it's the Hawks. I get it.
Yeah, it's just the idea of having two small guards like that. And with my 13th pick, I want a starting player. I want a starting caliber player, and so just to start both of those guys, you worry about them defensively and who they're going to guard, because Jase would have to probably guard two guards. But I think he's a tough, feisty little player, and somebody again who I think he's going to figure out how to overcome that size disadvantage. But man, it would be tough to do it. But based on my logic, I'd probably say, and again, who else is on the board is important. But I would consider him at 13 just because I think he's going to be a top 10 player in this class. Yeah,
same thought process. It's kind of a curveball if you're the Hawks. But John, thanks for doing this. I'm going to get you out of here because you gave me too much time already. You don't need to plug yourself on my show, I wouldn't imagine. But hey, if people want to follow your content, and it should be already, where can they? I'm sure you're doing TV soon. Where are people going to be able to see you the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'll do draft week. I'll be on NBA TV. I can't remember the schedule, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, live during the draft. I'll actually be doing a live show on Bleacher Report's app. So that's my itinerary for next week.
And everything else is written content at Bleacher Report. And you got the scouting page. What's the scouting page? Your personal page. I go there all the time.
JW Scouting is just. I don't get the opportunity to put out many big boards or personal thought process stuff on Bleacher Report, which is very mock draft heavy. So it's just another outlet for me to share some thoughts.
Mock drafts click better, as we all know. So
people care more about mock drafts than they do about Jase Richardson's wingspan.
Not on this podcast, John. Well, thanks again for doing this. I sincerely appreciate it. People should be following all your work. If you're a subscriber to this podcast, thank you for doing that. Also, please subscribe to Locked On Hawks, and we'll see everybody next time.